Hi, welcome to the Fitness Food Channel. In this video, I'll show you how to make oatmeal pancakes with protein powder. The ingredients you'll need are oats, a banana, 1 egg, and protein powder. You can add baking powder as well if you'd like to make them a little bit fluffier, but it's not necessary. So to start, ideally you want to soak your oats overnight so they're ready to use. If you use raw, dry oats, that will mean dry pancakes, and will also take longer to cook. So for the sake of the video, I didn't soak my oats overnight. That way I can show you this quick trick that I typically use. So I usually decide meal to meal exactly what I'll be eating. I'll say avoid using steel cut oats unless you have cooked them or soaked them beforehand. Go for large flake oats, you can go for minute oats, quick oats, or even instant oats. If you're using instant oatmeal, then you can avoid this trick altogether because they're essentially ready to go. You can soak them for 5 to 10 minutes and you're set. So you'll simply determine the amount of oats that you want to eat. Just check the back of the package, look at the label, and see exactly how many calories you think that you'd like to eat for this meal. The next step, if they're large flake oats or minute oats or quick oats, you'll take them, put them in a small blender with 2/3 the amount of water or milk you would typically use to cook the oats. The reason you're only using 2/3 is because you don't want the oats to be completely saturated, because that would mean watery pancakes. You want there to be a little bit left there for the oats to absorb, so they can help absorb the surrounding liquids, the egg, for example, and help bind them together. I'll take 1/3 a cup of large flake oats, and I will add 2/3 of a cup of water. I'm just gonna throw it in my magic bullet, blend it up, and let it sit for a minute. Now you do want to give it a couple of minutes just for the oats to absorb the surrounding water. Once you have your oats ready to go, take your banana and your egg and mash them together in your mixing bowl. From there, you'll add the oats, mix them all together, and then add in the protein powder. After that's all done, we'll check the consistency to make sure that there is enough fluidity, but it's not too dry so that when we add them to the pan, they spread out nicely and can cook thoroughly all the way through. You slice it up like this, it just makes life a little bit easier, especially if the banana is a little bit green. So using an egg is actually necessary, as the egg whites are the primary bonding agent or binding agent for all of the ingredients. If you don't want to use a whole egg, you can just use egg whites as well. So you'll want to mash the banana and egg up until it's pretty smooth. Some chunks are okay, but if it's too chunky, then the texture as well as the consistency of the batter and the pancakes will be off. That's looking pretty good. At this point, I'm going to add a little bit of cinnamon in for some flavor as well. Not too much, you can just sprinkle a little bit on there. If you really like cinnamon, add a little more. Odds are you may want to experiment a couple times just to figure out exactly how much you do like to use. If you'd like, you can even add a little bit of vanilla extract. Just a splash. This stuff is pretty strong. I feel like I added a little too much water to my oats, but I am going to go ahead and mix them in anyways. And we'll see how that does once we add in the protein powder. It's pretty watery right now. This is a little bit too watery. You don't want it to be so liquid. Just so you can see. A little bit, you got too fluid. I'm gonna go ahead and add the protein powder in, and we can deal with the consistency after. So I'm using a Beyond Yourself whey isolate. The flavor of this stuff is incredible. And the mixability is even better. There's some proteins that won't mix very well into liquids, especially when you heat them. They get this weird texture, but this stuff is amazing. I'd recommend using a vanilla flavor, or this one's cookie dough ice cream. You could use just a cookie dough as well. Once you get into chocolate and everything, since it is a fairly richer flavor, I find it starts to overpower it a little bit. I like the lighter flavored protein powders myself. It is still very fluid. At this point, if you're finding it a little bit too runny, you can always add in an extra scoop of protein or some additional oats. Since I've blended up the oats I put in initially, those will help absorb some of that liquid as it sits, but I'm also just going to throw in a small handful of some other oats, whole oats. It'll be a nice texture, and it will also help absorb the surrounding liquid as well. So again, at this point, if you're finding it a little bit liquid still, odds are the oats haven't started soaking up the liquid completely yet. So you can just let that sit for 10 or 15 minutes and it should be good to go. And when your batter is ready to go, it will still be a little bit fluid, but it will have a thicker texture. You'll see if you drag a spoon or a fork through it, it will kind of drag behind. If you're having trouble getting to this point and it's still very watery, you can try just letting the oats sit for a little bit longer and seeing how much more liquid they absorb. If you're still having trouble at that point, you can always add in a little bit of flour if you'd like. The next step is to cook them on a medium to low heat. Because they are so thick and oats are fairly heavy, and you're adding the banana as well, you want to give it enough time for all of that to warm up thoroughly and for it to cook on one side completely before you flip it over. If you turn the pancake over too soon and it's still too moist or too wet inside and the oats haven't absorbed all of the available liquid around it, then the pancake will probably fall apart in the pan, or if not, it'll be mush while you're eating it, and that's not ideal. So get your pan heating up on about the low end of a medium, or like halfway between medium and low. Give it a couple seconds to warm up, and then add in some oil or some butter. I'm going to use some coconut oil. I think the flavors will go really nicely with the cookie dough flavored whey protein and the banana as well. So I'm going to let that melt, let it start to sizzle a little bit, and then I'll add in the batter. It's fairly hot, so I'll give my batter a stir. I will add 1 full scoop to the pan. About a scoop and a half, because I've got enough batter for 2 pancakes in that case. To help it cook, I'd recommend putting a lid on top. I don't have a lid large enough for this, so I'll just cover it with another pan. So if you're not using a lid, or the lid is opaque and you can't see through, pay attention to the smells that are coming out. If it's starting to burn, you will definitely be able to smell that. I'd recommend even lowering the heat a little bit after you've added the batter. If you check on it and find that it's cooking slowly, that way you can avoid having it burn. One way to know is give it a slight wiggle, and if you still see the center moving around like it's liquid, it's because it still is. I'm just going to check the edges a little bit to see how much it is cooking. Mine may burn a little bit on this side, so I'm going to lower the heat a little bit more and put the lid back on. The more you remove the lid, the slower it will cook, because all of that additional heat inside will help cook the top. Mine is nearly ready to go. There's no movement in the pancake. Just going to make sure that it's all loose, because my non-stick pan is not a very good non-stick pan. See, it's caught right in the middle, right where it matters most. Once it's free and it's loose and it's cooked, it will slide around in the pan a little bit. From here, you can slide the spatula under and flip it. You can even try and use the pan to help flip it. There you go. After it's flipped, I would recommend not covering the pan, because that additional heat will form moisture on the inside and it will make the top of the pancake soggy and moist. So the batter from my first pancake was concentrated slightly in the center, so it took the middle a little bit longer to cook. This time, once I add the batter, you can use a spatula or your spoon or just a pan. Just help it out, make sure it's spread out evenly. That will give it a better, thorough cooking. My second pancake was cooking a little bit too slowly, so I just increased the heat a little bit. You'll see, since it was spread out, it is nice, it's thin. The baking soda won't take much effect here. Just check the underside. See how much it's cooking. Make sure it's not burning while trying to make it nice and crispy. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching the Fitness Food channel on making oatmeal protein pancakes.